question from the July meeting. We had some actual costs, but we still had some costs that were not actuals. They were still estimates. So how do we make sure we move forward? With the help of Tioga, we've worked with our project sponsors to come up with a generalized template to track those costs and understand what those cost drivers are. So when the project sponsors can actually put in all that information, we'll hopefully have a good apples to apples comparison that we all understand the basic framework of where those cost drivers are coming from so we can move those projects past that question of financial viability. Another step that happened after this meeting is the project sponsors, primarily the facility operator, Northwest Container Services, Gary Cardwell as the operator, invited ODOT staff to have a tour of his facility up in Portland. Since Northwest Container is set to be the operator for the Millersburg facility, it was very helpful for us to have a better idea of all the details of the operation. It's hard to pull that level of detail out of a project plan and a proposal. That was really helpful and informative because we now have a better understanding between staff, Tioga, and the operator of what those cost drivers might be. So again, that financial viability question hopefully will be addressed. The second major issue that we had with negotiations with the Millersburg project was around the land, the right-of-way acquisition. The project team was under some very tight timelines around procuring the international paper site as they move forward. And ODOT has been very clear back into the February timeframe, that the amount of land that we would be able to reimburse them for in the purchase would only be tied to what they're building in the phase one of their project. Their international paper site is over 190 acres. We knew they were not going to need a whole 190 acres to develop the intermodal facility, so how do we move that forward? The good news is Lynn County, under the direction of the county commissioners, found a way to go out and purchase that property, and now we will just be able to move forward in the agreement and reimburse them for the piece that is contained for the intermodal facility itself. So that was a great part in the process. We got that through the negotiation. For Treasure Valley, we had very similar conversations. So the first conversation was with the project sponsor and Tioga about those cost drivers. It's a little different situation when we're talking Treasure Valley because they still don't have an operator identified. They're getting much, much closer. So we had to make sure we were, again, talking apples to apples. What are those cost drivers and what do we need to make sure get included into that spreadsheet? That conversation went very, very well with the project sponsors. I think we're on a good solid footing between them, ODOT, and Tioga around the piece of property where they wanted to build this facility is a single piece of property, about 290-ish acres. And again, we needed to come back and have the conversation how to move forward to procure just the elements needed for the project for the intermodal facility or the transload facility. Working with the project sponsors at this point in time, it looks like they are working now with Business Oregon on a potential option or loan option to secure the property, in which case then we could take a very similar approach we're taking with Millersburg. They can define the actual land need, milestones set up for each one of those. And I thought I'd turn it over to Katie at this point to walk you through each of the agreements and kind of how those milestones are set up and the expectations moving forward.
Sponsors and the Department of Justice to develop the terms and conditions of the agreement to release the grant funds. We did put together project milestones that the recipients or the project sponsors helped us complete. Those milestones were established to allow you 2 additional opportunities to weigh in before releasing all of the funds for the project. So what we would be asking you today is release or allocate funds for the first grouping of milestones that would allow each project sponsor to move forward with preparing their project plans. They would be working with the railroad to get to a 30% design of the project. They'd be getting their agreements in place with their terminal operators, and they would be coming to an agreement with the railroad on a fee structure. Lastly, they would be developing a project description and appraisal for the property so that would be in front of you the next time you would be asked to take action, so you would know the cost for the property at that point. So for the Millersburg project, we would be asking you to approve $376,000 for their first series of milestones. Both project sponsors anticipate having that first body of work done by the end of January of next year. So we would likely come back to you early spring to seek your approval of the next chunk of money. The Malheur County Economic Development Corporation is seeking $525,000 to complete the first body of work. We would also ask that you, if you consider approving these amounts, consider authorizing the director to enter into those agreements and allowing the director to consider the contingency budget that is set aside in each of these projects and to make minor modifications. We would anticipate bringing any major modifications back to the commission for approval.
Questions? On the minor modifications,
Sure.
I'm thinking that maybe we should set some sidebars on what we mean by that to provide the director guidance, the deputy director guidance.
Chair Van Brocklen, fully agree. It was very clear to staff back in the meeting in July that the commission wanted to have some oversight and control of these projects moving forward. Again, we built the milestones in such a way I think that gives really good control. But again, there's always a few details that you can't get estimates 100%. So I think in looking at these projects, I would recommend that we consider maybe a 10% budgetary increase as a budgetary threshold of when things would need to come back to the commission for consideration, or if there's a change in any of the milestone dates of more than 90 days. The 90 days is pretty typical for how we manage Connect Oregon projects already as they develop their milestones and timelines. So that should not be a surprise to much of the project sponsors. Again, with this, I think this is guidelines, and again, the discretion would be to the director. If there was something else that didn't quite hit that threshold, but the director felt that it was necessary to come to the commission, they can always bring something even below that threshold for whatever reason, especially if we were getting some different indications from our Class 1 railroads on timelines or schedules or approvals. That might precipitate another visit back on the timelines and costs.
So just for clarification, the 10% would be on the amount above what we authorize. So, for example, Katie had mentioned $525,000. So if we went above that by more than $52,500 in discretionary decision-making, that would have to come back to the commission. That's my understanding of what
Yes.
you're proposing?
That's correct.
Great. Other questions or comments?
Do you believe there's any benefit to having ODOT Rail Division provide any review of the rail plans, any oversight, anything like that?
Chair Van Brocklen, Commissioner Callery, I fully agree that our rail division staff is well suited to look at the design concepts. Our rail planner, Bob Melbo, has a lot of experience in rail systems. He's reviewed the project plans and the proposals and the design layouts to date. I fully anticipate he will continue to look at those design layouts and concepts. I think he'll also be able to provide us some guidance on general cost estimates and level of effort and work to make sure with what we're seeing on the project plans matches estimates moving forward.
I'm familiar with Bob, and I have a lot of trust in his judgment. Thank you.
Commissioner Smith.
Yes, obviously we are stewards of the public money, and I wanted to make sure that as they go forward in their planning, to make sure they keep their pencils sharp, because we obviously have a not to exceed number in mind, but I would encourage them to not think about hitting that number, but if they can, come in below those numbers so we can use some of those funds throughout the rest of the state as we go forward.
Chair Van Brocklen and Commissioner Smith, really appreciate that. The legislation did allocate up to 26 for the Treasure Valley facility and up to $25 million for the Mid-Willamette Valley facility. But those were up to amounts and not to exceed. So I think it is a wise direction to both project sponsors as they develop their designs, and right now they have contingency to potentially use all the money. We want to make sure we have a functional facility at the end of the day, but if it doesn't require all the money to be spent, that money can go back into the Connect Oregon pot for a future competitive round and be beneficial other places in the state as well. So we will take that as staff as we continue to work with the project sponsors and the designs and each of the milestones coming into play.
Good comments. Appreciate both of those comments. Are there others or any further questions before we act? Okay, I'd look for a motion. Let's, would you like to take these one at a time?
that'd be best.
Yeah, all right. So should we start with the Millersburg project and take a motion on that?
I move to approve a draft funding agreement for the Connect Oregon Dedicated Intermodal Facility Project Mid-Willamette Valley Intermodal Center in Millersburg, sponsored by the Lynn Economic Development Group, and authorize funding for specific milestones.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. I'll now invite a motion on the Treasure Valley project.
I move to approve a draft funding agreement for the Connect Oregon Dedicated Intermodal Facility Project, Treasure Valley Reload Center, north of Nissa, sponsored by the Malheur County Development Corporation, and authorize funding for specific milestones.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr.
Next, we have an informational session. Administrator McClellan, is he
Mr.
here?
Mr. Chair, I believe we're running a little ahead of schedule. I am assuming Mr. McClellan's on his way.
Okay.
I would suggest maybe we take the next two items, starting with the consent calendar.
All right, let's do the consent calendar then. I had this month a number of conflicts on the consent calendar, so I am going to recuse myself from the entire right-of-way provision, which is item 3 of the consent calendar.
Good.
So
Okay.
I will be abstaining. I will not be voting on that, so I think we should pull that out, Mr. Deputy Director, and vote on that separately without my participation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll take the right-of-way as a separate motion. With that, is there any other conflicts?
To the extent, are we into the safe routes to school matters yet in the consent agenda? Or is that a different item?
Yes, that's part of the consent
Okay.
calendar, yes.
Sharon Smith, I work with Ben Lapine Schools as legal counsel, and we work very closely with Commute Options in the Safe Routes to School, so I will not want to participate in voting on the items for the Safe Routes to School grants. Oh, item 7, I'm sorry, that's what I was asking about,
Good.
if we're,
Thank you, yes. Item-
okay. Yeah.
Item 7. good.
Deputy
Item
Director,
7,
go ahead.
item 7.
Yep.
Deputy Director Mather, I'm also not going to participate in item 9 because my law firm represents Facebook. So I'm recusing myself from that matter due to a potential conflict of interest there. So it sounds like Commissioner Smith is not voting on item 7, and I'm not voting on items 3 or 9.
Okay. Good, so with those conflicts noted, I present,
All right, so let's take all items except, let's see, you can vote on everything Let's take all items except item 7. Well, let's take all items except items 7, 3, and 9. Let's do that. All right.
So,
Do I have a motion?
so move.
Okay, we are voting on all consent items except items.
Mr. Chair, just for the record.
Yes.
On your motion, you are proposing just by item number 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, and 11, is the motion.
Correct. This vote would be to approve those, and I believe we can all vote on all of those based on the declarations. So,
Thank you.
so is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, I will now move item 7.
7.
7 to excuse
All right.
Sharon.
Yeah. So that would just excuse Commissioner Smith. So I will take a motion on that. All items, I guess it would be item 7.
So moved.
Second? It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor of approving item 7?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
I abstain.
Now I need someone to move 3 and 9.
Chair.
I move approval of consent items 3 and 9 on the agenda.
Consent calendar agenda, second.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? I'm abstaining, as previously noted. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else on that?
No, I think we're good with the
Okay. So
consent
let's-
calendar. If we can, I guess I would just move on to the next item in,
Item H?
yeah.
All
item-
right.
Item H. Yep.
Item H. So item H, as previously foreshadowed, is moving, it would be a motion to have Deputy Director Mather succeeded by a new Deputy Director Chris Strickler, effective October 7th. So let's get a motion to that effect on the.
Oh, my gosh.
So let's get a motion on the table, and then we can discuss it. Okay,
Oh,
so,
gotcha.
so,
Chairman Brocklin, I move to appoint Chris Strickler to replace Paul Mather as Deputy Director of the Department of Transportation, approve action to delegate authorities necessary to administer the daily operations of the department to the Deputy Director, and direct the Deputy Director to furnish a fidelity bond of no less than $200,000.
do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Commissioner Brown, you have?
No.
No, okay. Commissioner Simpson, you had mentioned you might
Oh,
want to
yeah,
say
so
something?
I was more than happy to make this motion because of our conversation that I unfortunately fumbled on over the phone as it relates to this conversation pertaining to the Deputy Director / Director position for Mr. Chris Strickler. I just wanted to put it on the record that I am highly confident and very inspired and excited about the appointment of Chris Strickler to the director position for the Oregon Department of Transportation. And furthermore, I want to thank and commend all the hard work that went into this through Chair Van Brocklin, as well as our previous chair, Tammy Bainey, and the agency that we worked with through this Corn Ferry. It was a very long process, consumed a lot of time, and I definitely trust the fact that the amount of due diligence that went into this got us a very qualified candidate, and I think Oregonians should be happy and thankful and inspired and excited about the direction the department not only can go in, but will go in for the future.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other comments? Okay, we have a motion that's been seconded on the appointment of a new Deputy Director, effective October 7th, Chris Strickler, who will succeed current Deputy Director Paul Mather. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And we do have,
Tom is in the
Tom
room.
McClellan has
Excellent.
arrived as we've
Great.
completed those items, so we should move on.
Fantastic. All right, we'll now move to item G, which is to receive an informational update on the Service Transformation Program Real ID and House Bill 2015. So at this point, I will welcome DMV Division Administrator Tom McClellan and ODOT Service Transformation Program Manager Benjamin Kahn. Welcome, gentlemen, and looks like, and Communications Director
We're going to pull Tom Fuller into this a little bit,
Tom
too.
Fuller, so the three of you.
That's right.
Welcome all, good to see
Great.
you.
Thank you very much.
We've been hearing a lot about Real ID, Tom, so we're looking forward to hearing it from the horse's mouth. as
Yeah,
they
the
say.
horse, great.
All right, floor is yours.
Great, thank you very much. Again, for the record, my name is Tom McClellan, DMV Administrator. With me is Ben Kahn, he is our Transformation Manager, and we have pulled Tom Fuller in to help with this as well. He's playing a very key role in our Real ID communications, so I'd like to have you hear it from that horse directly. So what I want to do today is cover three things. We've committed to twice a year giving you an update on our Service Transformation Program, or STP is what we call it for short. And so this is part of that obligation, is to come to you and give you an update on how we're doing there. And Ben will cover most of that. But I also do want to touch on the Federal Real ID Act and our implementation of that, and also cover House Bill 2015, which is new legislation that we will be implementing soon after we start offering Real ID compliant cards. So that's my plan here, take advantage of the time that you have allowed to us. A little bit of just background, because I know we have new members on the commission now with not as much history with this, but we've been at this actually since February of 2012 is when we first got some funding to do some planning for this, to replace very, very old computer systems, mainframe computer systems, COBOL, software, and so funding to plan in February of 2012. We hired a consultant in the summer of 2013, independent eyes and ears, to give us some recommendations, and they basically told us you need to replace everything. So it's not like make a few modifications here and there. You need to start over, basically. You have code from the 60s and 70s that needs to be replaced. And so start over, plan for 9 to 10 years. And at the time they said you're going to spend $90 to $100 million, just based on what they could find from other states doing something similar to what we envisioned. That soon became 90 million, not 90 to 100. Director Garrett was very firm with me on that. It's not 100, it's 90. So that's what we're sticking to. In the 2015 session, we had positions approved, mostly permanent positions, which was great. We got the support for what we described as a commercial off-the-shelf system, or a COTS system, not a build from scratch, but let's bring something in that's been installed in other states successfully and bring that to Oregon, and we'll configure it to meet our needs, meet our requirements. We got support for that. We started quality assurance, or QA risk assessments. We focused on organizational change, and making sure that our leaders in our organization could help their co-workers make it through very significant changes in how we do our business, how our business processes work, and how we interact with the public. We did site visits. We learned from our own past mistakes in our reviews, and then what other states had done. In June of 2017, we signed a 10-year contract with Fast Enterprises, a company that has done this in other states very, very successfully, with possible extensions as well. So it includes the work to transition to new software, but also the support that we need after that. So we're not just bringing it in and then, okay, I hope we can figure out how to make this work for a while. We're going to pay them to help support and maintain that software. Earlier this year, January 22nd, was our first rollout of the software, and that was our vehicle system replacement. It also provided the tools that we needed to regulate and inspect businesses, the dealers and the dismantler companies that we're responsible for, and also a point-of-sale system for our field offices. So really the cash register functions came in with that rollout. As we look to the future, it's July 6th of next year is when the next rollout, the major rollout will take place, and that's the driver privilege, management aspects. And everything will fit together at that point. Where today we're kind of coexisting with a little old and a little new, and that's a little harder to navigate if you're an employee in particular. As we look out into the future, into the 2021-23 period, that'll be after we've installed everything that pretty much FAST can offer to us. We want to start investing in what's called lobby management or queuing systems for our field offices. So instead of just grab a number and it's just first in, first out, we actually can manage those transactions by the type of transaction the person comes in with. So if it's a simple registration renewal, we can run those through the new employee that knows how to do those things and can move those pretty quickly. More complex, maybe title transaction, we can give those to a more seasoned employee. They're much more efficient, and there's tools out there to help with that. That's something we want to invest in the next phase of this service transformation program, as well as self-service kiosks. So people can go up and renew their registration and do other DMV business without an employee even being involved. You go to a screen, you push a few buttons, you put your credit card in, you pay for it, out pops what you need, registration card and stickers. That's used in many other states, and we'd like to invest in that as kind of the next or final phase of STP. We've had very good success up to now. It's taken a lot of discipline on our part to say no to additional scope. There's a lot of things that we'd love to do that we've just said, nope, that'll have to come later. So it's with that discipline we've had to apply has served us well, and we'll have to continue as we go for the next 9 months, especially working with the vendor, because they are very good, and they'll do anything we ask. We just got to be careful we don't take on too much, bite off too much too soon. So that's just a quick kind of background, a little history, and a little bit of the direction that we're going, and I'd like to turn it over to Ben at this point.
So again, for the record, my name is Ben Kahn, Transformation Manager at DMV. So we want to take a look at the DMV budget for just a minute here. DMV has spent over $12 million on the Service Transformation Program during the 2015-17 biennium, and that includes buying the FAST software. Spending for the last biennium, 17-19, was approximately $35 million, including the first rollout of the vehicle and business licensing system. And our budget for the 2019-21 biennium is $30 million, and that will include the driver system implementation. So right now they're using the new vehicle system, but they're using the old driver system. So they have two systems on their computers. We were just at the Dalles DMV watching them work with the two systems, and it's a bit complicated. So having one system in the future, both a vehicle and a driver system, which will roll out in July of 2020, will be great. And this total spending for up till June of 2021 will be about $77 million. Again, we're keeping under the $90 million that Director Garrett has asked us to do. So it's really important that you get the system ready for the people, but just as important is getting the people ready for the system. And so we're emphasizing the people side of our transformation, and that includes preparing our managers and technical leads with the skills to help coworkers traverse the changing work environment. And we do this through something we call Organizational Change Leadership, or OCL for short. Employees who process driver transactions weren't that affected by the first rollout, and so now we're focused on those employees to make sure that they're ready for this next rollout, helping them by providing tools that they can use to prepare, helping the managers prepare their staff for the changes. Another thing that we do is we do what's called a culture change assessment. So we do a survey of all DMV employees, and we say, are you ready, willing, and able to use the new system? And of course, at this point in the process, they're not ready to use the new system because they haven't been trained, but we also get some other information from them to help us identify areas of DMV with the 850 employees where we can focus our attention and help prepare those staff. We have staff that have worked here for like 30 years, and all they know is the legacy COBOL systems, and they're a little nervous about these new web-based systems that we're trying to roll out. And so we provide extra support to those staff because they're very valuable. They have the knowledge of our procedures and our policies, and we want to keep them. We don't want them to leave. So by having this OCL approach, it prepares our staff for the changes. We have, across the state, about 80 change agents, and these are folks who get a little extra training that work for DMV. They're both managers and other staff, and they help us by reaching out to those who are struggling and lifting them up and helping them prepare for the changes that are coming. So we've invested a lot in this organizational change leadership approach, making sure that our staff are ready for the changes that are coming. The program continues to benefit from independent quality assurance services provided by CSG Government Solutions. CSG conducted an independent initial risk assessment for the driver's rollout. Their report rated the driver's rollout project at low risk overall, and there are currently 5 open risks, 2 are medium and 3 are low, and the project is currently on schedule, on budget, fully staffed, and well managed. Areas of concern for the quality assurance vendor include coordination and scheduling of Real ID activities, impacts of new legislation, and possible delays in critical procurement activities. And DMV has assigned an overall project manager to mitigate the risk of coordinating and scheduling Real ID activities, and a dashboard of Real ID activities will be shared later in our presentation. So this is just a chart that shows the status of various parts of our project. Again, our schedule, that has to do with the fact that we're aligning our Real ID schedule with our STP schedule, making sure they're in sync. And then operational readiness, we're mapping out our current processes and then mapping out the to-be processes and making sure that our staff are prepared for the changes that are coming. So I'm excited about the driver's rollout, and again, we were just visiting one of the offices here the only office here in the Dalles, and they're excited about the changes too. They're looking forward to one system, they're looking forward to more interfaces, looking forward to being able to serve the customer better. And work is well underway for the driver's rollout, including validating requirements and evaluating opportunities to improve or streamline business processes. FAST, our vendor and DMV project staff, are job shadowing in field offices and headquarter units to gain a deeper understanding of how things work for employees completing driver transactions. This background knowledge helps project staff identify areas where business processes may need to change to work with the new technology. And this system configuration work continues. One of the changes we made on the vehicle side is we now print registration cards in the field offices. We don't mail those out anymore. So we give it to them right away, and we make sure we tell them that before they throw it away. Now, you want to save this, but it's been a great change and saved some cost in mailing as well. We are also identifying who from DMV Business will assist with testing. On the vehicles rollout, back in January, we tested close to 5,000 scenarios, and we expect to do about the same for the driver's rollout. The driver system project team is offering demos of our base system to our staff so they can see what the system's going to look like before we roll it out, so they're not nervous about that. We also use a train-the-trainer approach for training, so we have DMV trainers that are receiving training from FAST, from our vendor, and they're developing the training curriculum, and they'll be conducting employee training this coming spring of 2020, and then the DMV trainers will then be able to continue to train new DMV staff long after the vendor leaves. The interfaces team on the project has connected with our key external partners who share or exchange data with DMV, and I'll talk a little more about interfaces in an upcoming slide. Data conversion is going well. We have to convert data from our legacy system, millions and millions of records, over to our new modern system. And what we do is we do these runs every week to practice our data conversion to make sure that things are working right, so that during Go Live weekend in July of 2020, it'll work seamless because we've practiced it over and over again. And we look forward to full implementation of the driver module integrated into our existing Oliver system on July 6th of 2020. So let's talk a little more about interfaces. We will continue to provide the same interfaces we provide today between DMV and our stakeholders. However, we may improve the way we interface with these partners. We will also connect to some new systems which are needed to be in compliance with issuing Real ID, driver's licenses, and identification cards. Some of our current interface partners include the Oregon Judicial Department, where we receive electronic notification of convictions and suspensions, Department of Homeland Security, where we do electronic verification of immigration status for legal presence eligibility for driver licensing, Oregon State Police, this is where we check for stolen vehicle alerts, the Transportation Safety Administration, we do hazmat checks for commercial driver license issuance, Social Security Administration, where we verify the Social Security card, and then we also have multiple interfaces with the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators, or AMVA. We currently check the National Motor Vehicle Title Information System, NVIDIS, to verify VINs and vehicle brands and odometer records, and to check on vehicle titling in other states. We also check the problem driver pointer system. This allows us to see if a driver has their driving privileges suspended in another state. And we also check against the commercial driver's license system to get past information from other states about drivers applying for commercial driving privileges. A lot of interfaces, and we're going to add some more for our rollout in July. We're adding the federal State Department U.S. passport verification system to verify passport status for Real ID compliance. And we're adding our the state-to-state interface, which verifies driver license issuance in other states and assists motor vehicle agencies in ensuring people do not possess licenses from multiple states. A lot of interfaces, and we look forward to doing more in the future. And these new interface partnerships are required in order to receive Homeland Security approval to issue Real ID credentials. We actually have sent some staff, last week we sent some staff to Florida to an AMVA-sponsored state-to-state user group meeting. And today, some of our DMV subject matter experts are in Missouri to learn more about how they use state-to-state and issue Real IDs. And then they're going up to Washington next week to learn more from them. So we're taking lessons learned from other states that have done this before. One of the areas I'm most excited about is DMV to You, because we can keep people out of our field offices by having more services available online. We have expanded our online services as part of our vehicle launch in January. Customers can now purchase a trip permit online. They can order custom plates and view their plates on different backgrounds. They can replace a plate or reprint a renewal receipt. They can notify us of vehicle sale, dealer dismantler complaints, and report an address change. And you can also renew your vehicle registration online. And we also have a feature where you can initiate your title or registration application. You still have to go to a DMV to finish it, but you can do all the data entry up front so that your trip goes a lot smoother once you get to a DMV. So these are some of the options we offer today. And we also have the ability for our business partners to be able to create a login where they can access a dashboard tailored for their business needs. We have separate dashboards for different kinds of businesses. Vehicle dealers and record inquiry account holders can conduct some business online with DMV in a secure platform, and we hope to expand and provide more online services for our customers and business partners. Some of the things we are going to add as part of the driver's rollout is you'll be able to schedule your drive test online. Now, I'm sure all of you have already taken your drive test, but your children or grandchildren can do that. You can also pay reinstatement fees online. And that's great for someone who's left the state and is in another state and wants to pay their fees so they can move on with their life. We're also looking at, if you lose your driver's license, being able to replace your license online and not have to go to a DMV. So to wrap up my part of the presentation, it's important to point out that we moved many processes that we used to do at headquarters up to the front end to the field offices, letting our field offices staff print registration cards, process vehicle titles, and other things. And now with our new processes, more than 50% of our titles are auto-approved with multiple electronic edits and business rules. So those titles used to go out in about 6 weeks, and now they're going out in about 10 days. And that's for about half our titles are following that process. We also are adjusting our resource allocation to ensure we put staff where the volume of work is the highest. And with improved technology comes even more opportunities in the future. Thanks for your time. I'll turn it back over to Tom to talk about Real ID.
Speaking of opportunities or challenges, the Federal Real ID Act would be topmost for me as far as something that we are now charged with complying with. From the federal perspective, it takes effect October 1st of 2020. So that's when the airports, the TSA agents at security checkpoints will start looking for a different set of documentation from people. For state-issued driver license and ID cards, it's either a gold star, or in our case, a black star. You can see there's an example right there. That's a current style of card that we issue. We've been doing that since March. We were statewide. But at the upper right corner of the card, if it's a compliant card, we'll have a black star, and that's what the TSA agent's going to be looking for. Other very secure facilities like a military base or a nuclear power plant, those types of things will also start requiring that type of documentation from people to get through. This is, as he said, at the same time we're putting our new driver system out there. So for our employees, lots of change. For our customers, lots of change as well. So a lot of work is going into preparing us for that. He mentioned a couple of new interfaces. Those will help us do our work, but employees need to be trained in how to use those systems and how to respond appropriately to whatever message comes back from those systems as well. So that's going to be a big thing for us. The state-to-state system, for one, where you're looking at is the person licensed in another state, trying to determine, well, were they licensed there first or after? When were these, what was the timing of this? And resolving the duplicates that are there is the responsibility of the state that's doing the query. So there actually is some workload that comes along with connecting up to those systems. It's for the better. We're cleaning up our database. We have better systems and more accurate information. But there is workload that goes along with using those new systems. We're going to use, and we are using, print materials, social media, radio and TV ads, web-based resources. We've partnered with several key stakeholders. The most important, I think, would be the Port of Portland, the AAA. We've reached out to the rural airports, not just PDX, but contacting them around the state. And of course, starting to communicate with the public about what this means and getting the word out. We've been very fortunate to have Tom Fuller take the lead really on that media communication aspect of it. And I wanted to kind of turn it over to him to show him a few of the things just recently we've made available and other things we have plans. Tom?
Thank you, Tom. Chair Van Brocklin, members of the Commission, for the record, my name is Tom Fuller. I'm the Communications Section Manager for the Oregon Department of Transportation. Oregon is in a very unique position when it comes to Real ID. We are currently one of only 5 states or territories that are not offering a Real ID form of identification. That includes Oklahoma, New Jersey, American Samoa, and the North Mariana Islands. We will, as I understand, be the very last to actually start offering those, and this is why we have a unique dilemma. We will not begin to offer a Real ID option until July 6th of 2020, and the TSA will start enforcing a Real ID or federally acceptable form of identification at airports to fly domestically on October 1st, 2020. That's less than 3 months away. DMV estimates that there will be nearly 1 million Oregonians who will want a federally acceptable identification by that time. Real ID transactions, we estimate, will take an additional 8 minutes, and there just aren't enough hours in the day. We haven't been able to create a time-space warp at this time to be able to provide all those needed identifications by October 1st, 2020. So as we got together about a year ago or so to talk about what are the options, we decided that the real option, the only real option available for Oregonians, is to use or obtain a U.S. passport. And we've done some research, and we know that 37% of Oregonians currently have a U.S. passport. That's good news. We also know that Real ID is only required after you turn 18, so we can potentially that number. But that still means that 2 million do not have a U.S. passport. So our communication strategy over the next year and a half, and especially from October 1st of 2019 to October 1st, 2020, is to increase the awareness, change attitude, and move Oregonians to action. And that's to do 2 things. One, go to our website, oregon.gov/realid, use our interactive tool to determine whether they need a Real ID, And then secondly, if they find that they are going to want one, to obtain a U.S. passport. They can do that now. They don't have to wait till July. Documents and requirements are virtually the same or very similar. It is not that expensive for somebody to do. And the most important thing is that they can get that passport prior to October 1st, 2020. And as Tom mentioned, we have some very strong partnerships in helping us with this campaign. The legislature provided us with $300,000 for communications around this. We're going to use that money well. We have a strong partnership with the Port of Portland, also with the Transportation Security Administration. Steve Tabor, who's the Oregon director, has been extremely helpful. And in fact, probably if you go to an airport in the next day or so, TSA agents at PDX and other Oregon airports will begin handing out this little bookmark to everyone who presents an Oregon identification that is not Real ID compliant. And that would be everyone who tries to offer their driver license. And this card tells people that there will be significant changes to identification requirements on October 1st, 2020, and they need to go to our website, oregon.gov/realid, to get more information. We are launching a number of communication strategies over the next year in order to try and reach Oregonians with this very important message, because the last thing we want for people to do is to show up at the airport on or after October 1st, 2020 and miss their flight because there is a significant delay in the alternative form of proving your identity that TSA has said will take place starting on that date. So we have a direct traveler strategy. We are going to be in all the airports. We will have these posters that you see before you here in all the regional and international airports in Oregon. There will be a card that I provided for you in your packet that provides them with information. The idea of this is you pass through security, you see this poster, you grab a card, stick it in with your stuff, and when you get on the plane and you're finally relaxed, you can then become more anxious as you read this card. And as I mentioned, TSA will be handing out the bookmarks. We're also producing a video that TSA will show on this big screen in front of the security screen, or the security line, so people will be able to get information. It's a silent, I call it the paper doll video. We'll be showing that to you at another time. And then we're also going to be involving email. That's a very good form of communication. We use a vendor called GovDelivery to put out press releases for the commission, as we're going to be doing today. Many Oregon public agencies use this. It's a government email service only. And the vendor, Granicus, indicates that all the public agencies in Oregon, if you put them all together, have the opted-in email addresses of 50% of all Oregonians. So we're going to partner with the other state agencies and ask them to send several waves of emails for us that we will hope to reach nearly 50% of all Oregonians with email. We have a lot of online presence. Our website, oregon.gov/realid, with the interactive tool. We will be utilizing social media and advertising and native posts, and so that will be Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We have a real expert in that area in Sarah Stone on my staff. We're already developing the plans, and we'll be implementing those starting on October 1st. We'll also be doing video, and we have queued up for you a video that we just produced out at the at Portland International Airport, which we will be putting on social media and in other places to encourage people to check whether they need a Real ID. I turned it on already. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
You've heard the advice, arrive 2 hours early for your flight, right? Well, a big change is coming here at the airport that will upend that advice unless you're prepared. Why? Because of something called Real ID. Starting October 1st, 2020, you will need a Real ID compliant form of identification to get through security. Oregon DMV doesn't start offering a Real ID license until July 6th of 2020. There simply isn't enough time to meet the expected demand of nearly 1 million Oregonians who will want a Real ID option before October 2020. Don't worry, you can still get on a plane without rushing to DMV first. The answer for us Oregonians are these: a U.S. passport or passport card. I've got them. I'm going to start using them in 2020. How about you? The good news is, if you don't have one, you can apply for one today. We've got detailed information at oregon.gov/RealID, including a checklist that helps you decide if you need a Real ID form of identification. But if you're going to travel by air, you will need more than your standard driver license or ID card. Otherwise, you'll have to spend considerably more time at security and might miss your flight, and we don't want that. You can apply for a passport today. There are over 75 passport acceptance facilities in Oregon, including most U.S. Postal Service offices. The process takes 4 to 6 weeks. You might consider getting a passport card. It's only $30 if you already have a passport and easier to carry around than your passport book. Okay, we covered it all. You need a Real ID compliant form of identification to board a commercial flight after October 1st, 2020. You won't be able to get an Oregon driver license that's Real ID compliant in time. Instead, get and use a passport or passport card. Find out more at oregon.gov/RealID. Anything else? Oh yeah, have a nice flight. So in addition to some of these digital products, we're also partnering with the news media as well. And October 1st, 2019, we're holding a press event at the airport featuring the port's security administrator, the TSA director, as I mentioned, Steve Tabor, and our DMV administrator, Tom McClellan, where we'll begin to partner with the news media across the state to make sure they are properly using the right message. Around this time of year, we get an increased interest in Real ID because we've had yearly extensions for quite a number of years. So we've already seen stories start to appear, and we are wanting to make sure that they are carrying our message of don't come to DMV to get an Oregon Real ID compliant ID or license, instead get a passport. So that will be one of our big strategies. We'll also be using paid media, radio, TV, something called over the top. So if you use Hulu, Roku, these types of things, then we'll have messages that are there. We also have a partner strategy where we are partnering with AAA, federal and state stakeholders, the 76 passport acceptance facilities in the state, using articles, FAQs, backgrounders, and scripts. And finally, we're also going to reach out to those who do not speak English well. We want to make sure that they receive not only linguistically, but culturally appropriate materials. We're working with the governor's office and others to obtain lists of organizations and others that we can reach out to. Long story short, we want every Oregonian to get the message to get a passport if they're going to fly. Thank you.
Any questions for Tom at all at this point? 'Cause I got just a few more things I want to run through with you.
Yeah, let's take the questions on Real ID right now. It's fresh in people's mind. Commissioner Smith.
So is the message that if you don't have, if you're not due for renewal of your license, you can't go in and get a renewed license that's compliant with Real ID?
So, Chair, Speaker. Is that one's on? Is that because it's not? Got too many or something?
Just move you, oh, there you go.
Here we go, okay, here we go.
We're good.
If you're out of cycle, if it's an 8-year card, okay, and so you decide you want to get a Real ID compliant card, you can come in and get a replacement card.
You can.
Yeah, and you'll be charged for the replacement fee, which is
Sure.
$26. Plus, we've been instructed by the legislature that this has to be cost neutral, has to be a cost recovery. So there's a supplemental fee that we'll be adding to that. We've been talking about maybe $20. So it'd be like a $46 transaction. You can replace it, walk away. You'll keep the same expiration date that you have on your current card, but it'll have the black star on that card. You can use it then for travel.
Which
You're
is-
talking about your license, right?
Your license or your ID card,
Or your ID.
Right.
either one, yes.
So I'm anticipating that that's a lot of what the public will want to do because it's cheaper than getting a passport. How are you preparing for that?
So that's where you go through these things. The next slides I've got talk about the steps
Okay.
we're going through, and communication is a big part of it. Education is a big part of
Sure.
letting people know.
Well, you're encouraging people to not do that, it sounds like.
If they can wait,
Okay.
if everyone tried to come in that 3-month
Right,
period,
well, and I
there's
think
no
you need
way.
to be real direct about it.
Yes.
Just say, please wait.
That's right,
Yeah, because otherwise, everybody's going to, well, why don't I just come in?
right.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just need to be very direct in your communications about
Yes.
that.
Yes, absolutely, as direct as we possibly can. The other thing we're going to be doing, starting early next year, is sending some letters out to people who are scheduled for renewal during that 6-month period. So we'll do like 2 months at a time. That if you don't need a Real ID compliant card, if you don't think you're going to need it, you actually can renew your driver's license or your ID card a year ahead of time before it expires. So come in before that period of time. Let's get those people, if they want to, come in early. You'll get the same expiration date as you would get if you came in a year from now. You're basically paying for 9 years instead of 8 years with that. So if we can shift the workload a little bit, because part of the goal for us is to get people out of the office that don't necessarily need to be there or could do the transaction at a different time.
So what's the earliest you could go in and trade out your license, your
I-
driver's license or your state ID card for a compliant one?
For a compliant one, that's July 6th of
July
next year.
6th.
That's the earliest that we'll have everything in place that we can truthfully say we are compliant and put that black star on the card.
And it's July 6th, this is the question we're going to get. Why July 6th?
So the legislation that was passed in 2017, so 2 years ago, gave us a date of July of 2020 to comply. That has been the date that we'd picked for our second rollout of our new computer system, and that's on the driver side of things. So there's changes there that we need to make with that new system, and at least 2 of those interfaces that he described to you, the state-to-state and the passport verification system, those are expected that a compliant state would be using those systems. And there's procedural changes, there's rulemaking we have to do, there's a bunch of things that we have to do to be ready. That is the earliest we can do that without a lot of risk being added to this whole endeavor for us. So we're,
And Mr. Chair, just adding to that, our message really is it was an either-or situation. We could either do Real ID and not do the new driver system, or we could do both at the same time, but not till July.
I see.
So that's one of sort of our key messages. We would do a bunch of coding and then have to scrap it in July when the new driver system came out. It just wasn't a good use of state resources and public
So
money.
it sounds like the simple message is if you want a compliant Oregon driver's license or Oregon ID card, you need to go in after July 6th. The alternative is to go to the federal system and either get a passport or a passport card,
yes,
which you can get now.
yes,
And you can have it in your hand in 6 weeks,
Rest
roughly.
comfortably at
And
night.
are we getting assurances from the logical place that most people would probably go to Seattle or for their passport? Are we getting, is the State Department helping here for our state? Because I think Seattle's the closest and San Francisco's probably the next closest.
Right, Chair Van Broeklen, that is for an expedited one-day passport, which you can do. I've done
Otherwise,
that
you
before.
mail it in, right?
Otherwise, you mail it in, but you do have to go in person to one of the 76 passport acceptance facilities. So we've partnered both with the State Department. They have assured me on multiple occasions that they will be ready for the demand. Those are their assurances. I will have to wait and see, I guess, what happens. We're also measuring it, putting the dipstick in every now and again with the State Department to find out how many Oregonians have passports. That'll be the main measurement of the success of our campaign. We have also reached out to all 76 acceptance facilities in Oregon. Mostly they're post offices, county clerks, universities, city halls, that sort of thing. Made them aware of what we're doing, and they have all agreed to be able to help us in any way that they can.
And is the timing on the passport versus the federal ID card different, or are they roughly the same? In other words, you can either apply for a passport, which you said would be 4 to 6 weeks, or you can apply for a federal ID card, right? Or not right?
There is a list of TSA acceptable identifications, which include a passport card, military ID, and a couple of other ones.
There's a global card that's available.
It's only
as well.
tribal.
Yeah,
Right, or
global
tribal
entry.
or global entry, right. But I don't think there's any other form of federal
So
ID.
with respect to the passport card, is that about the same length of time to get one of those as to get a passport?
They do it at the same time.
Oh, you get them both at the same
Yeah,
time?
I
Yeah.
mean, you would apply at the same
okay.
You can
time.
get them at the same time, or you can do one or the other as well.
Yep.
But
They
You
won't
can't-
let you get the card without the passport, though. You have to get the passport.
You can just get a passport card, Assistant Director Travis Brower, in fact, just has a
Really?
passport card.
So they changed it.
And and just day before yesterday, I mailed off my passports to obtain passport cards because it's easier to carry around and not carry your passport book.
So Travis, did you mail your application or email your application in? How long did it take to get the card?
It was very short, and to be honest, I got the passport card after the legislature declined to implement real ID as a backup. It looked like it may go back earlier. I went into the post office, did the photos, sent it in, came back in a couple of months, so it was a very easy process.
Okay.
Unfortunately, now expired as of Sept, so I can get it.
So the report on the record from Travis is 2 months, if you mail. So it sounds like the path between now and July 6th is the federal path, right? It's a passport or what Travis did. It's a card, unless you've got a global entry card or you've got whatever the other.
Tribal military ID.
Tribal or military that but for the vast majority of the public, I think between now and July 6th, it sounds like it's either get a passport or get a federal ID card. And it sounds like it's about the same length of time.
Right.
So you've got to really take into account that the sooner the better there because, I mean, why would you wait?
And Chair Van Brockland, that's why we're starting the campaign on October 1st. The port does research on when people book air travel, and they told us that people don't even start thinking about holiday travel or traveling at this time of the year until they come back from the summer holidays. So that's why we're starting now, because people will think about booking their Thanksgiving and Christmas flights for this year. We want to hit them with that message now while they're thinking about it, and then we'll hopefully get them to obtain those IDs. Start working on that now. And then we also have a tool to help Oregonians determine what documents they need to bring with them when they do come in to obtain an Oregon Real ID compliant ID card or license. And they can actually print that list out, and then if they do that now, then they can obtain those documents now, get a passport, but then also be ready when the lines aren't as long to obtain a Real ID license at Oregon DMV.
Other questions on Real ID?
I have a comment. Tom,
Yeah.
one of the things that might be really important, and I brought this up years ago when this first started becoming an issue, is the Department of Human Services has non-emergent medical transportation where they transport clients by plane, sometimes down to Stanford, across the border, sometimes into Oregon. These are people that are really, really low income. Sometimes all they have is the ID. I think that if we could get something dispatched to DHS and to OHA to let them know, to think about their clients that may need this in the future, to get the information out and get them moving in that direction, because a lot of times it's a medical emergency that they need to be taken, and so they can't wait, and if they're being turned
That's a
away,
really good point, Commissioner Brown.
it becomes very costly, because then you put them on an ambulance airport transport.
So do those, Commissioner Brown, do those go out of the general aviation area of airports?
Sometimes, yes. So if it isn't like critical that they've been hurt, they're not being mercy flighted or something like that, maybe it's heart surgery or maybe it's a transplant or something to that point, they have a little bit of lead time, but it's not much, and so just giving them a heads up to think about that is probably going to be very helpful.
So I believe, Commissioner Brown, that if they're going out of an area where they don't go through TSA security, they won't need to worry about it.
But a lot of times they fly commercial.
Oh, I see. Yes, very good.
Okay, Tom, I think we'll let you finish your slides.
All right, so this slide just shows you that we're on track. There is a lot of work that we're tracking here. I mentioned the Real ID fee. That's going to take a rulemaking, so you'll be seeing some rulemaking later this year. Some policy work that we have to do. Public information you've mentioned there. We've started the employee criminal history checks, criminal background checks, fingerprint-based. We've had background checks for many years. We just haven't had to do fingerprint-based background checks. All our managers have gone through that, and now we're starting to go through with our existing other employees. Plan to have that done by the end of this calendar year. We have to submit a compliance package that will go in probably around the May-June timeframe is when we're assured that we're going to be ready. We purchased scanners a few months ago that will be installed in our field offices because one of the requirements is that as the person presents their identity, legal presence, social security card, address documents, that we will create a digital image of those documents. And we're going to lock that down as best we can and probably won't have a whole lot of use for those documents, but it is a federal requirement, which is what's driving a lot of the concern and consternation is that people have gone through this once before. They've gotten an Oregon driver's license in the last 8 or 9 years. Now they have to do it again. They have to find that birth certificate that they had to get from Kansas or whatever. Hopefully they've kept it because now if they want the Real ID credential, they're going to have to bring all those documents back to us. We're going to quickly scan them and store them in our, in our headquarters area or the state data center, and then hand it back to them. They'll be able to keep it, those documents. But that's a big change for people. They've been informed, we'll do it once and done. You never have to do it again. Well, if you want a Real ID credential, we'll have to do it again. Bring those documents. Let's go to the next one. So a lot of focus on educating the public, making sure they understand their choices, that there are options here. Prepare in advance, get your documents ready, and then those partnerships are going to be very important for us. Every opportunity we can to get the word out to people. But we know we'll miss some people. There's still going to be some grandmothers showing up, to travel to visit the family over the holidays next year, and they're not going to have the documents, and they're going to say, how come you didn't tell me? No matter how many times we try, it's going to happen, and it'll be us that'll be blamed, I'm sure. So we're taking it very, very seriously. Let's go to the next. So what can we do to manage the increase in customer visits that we anticipate? An online pre-application is one of the ways that we think can help. If people will go online to our website and provide the initial information that we need for intake, basically for that transaction, get it started before you get to the counter and talk to an employee. That's going to save time. Every person that does that will cut into that 8 minutes that he just mentioned, because the shorter those are, the better. We've got to move people as quickly as possible. And we may be able to find a way to incentivize people to use that online service. So as we do the rulemaking, we're looking at possibly providing a discount, $1 off or $5 off or something if you'll go online and do that work up front yourself. We're seeing if that's feasible, legal if that's feasible. That's one of the things we're looking at. Lobby management is another thing that we're looking at. We have in our larger offices staff that serve as greeters. They meet people as they walk in the door. What are you here for? Can I take a look at your documents? Have you filled out your application? We did get additional staff from the legislature. We have 49 positions, new positions, that we'll be filling. Most of those for our field offices. As we place those around in different offices around the state, some will be designated as greeters, sweeping the lobbies, talking to people as they walk in the door, making sure they don't wait an hour before they find out they don't have what they need. So as quickly as we can move people in and out, the better. So a lot of work on that, a lot of training for our staff. At the same time, they're learning how to do Real ID. Again, they're learning our new system. And that really starts in earnest around April of next year. We have identified where we're going to place the new employees. And one of the positions will be put in the call center because we know we're getting a lot more phone calls and email messages, a lot of questions the public's going to have. We may have, it'll depend on the office, we're looking at maybe designated windows or counters within certain offices. Here's the 1 or 2 Real ID counters, and so the employees that are doing those will be more familiar with it. Maybe we can move those through a little faster. That doesn't work for every office, but in some of the higher volume, larger offices, that might work. Staffing the windows as much as we possibly can. That's through scheduling and tell people they can't get sick and can't take vacations. No. But we've got to have as many people work in the counters, work in those lobbies as we possibly can, because we do expect a lot more people coming through. We are developing a proposal. Actually, we're going to write something up to propose that it will require additional staff, but to extend our hours. The idea of maybe going a little bit more into the evening, possibly some Saturday hours around the state. We used to have some offices that offered Saturday hours. We're just not staffed for that. Because if we added a Saturday to a Monday through Friday, I like to call it watering the soup. You just kind of spread your people out more thinly. And you can't support, the staff isn't feeling supported, and you don't have the capacity that you need. And if you do add Saturday hours to Monday through Friday, you also need people in headquarters that are available to help answer the questions for the tougher cases that invariably they need some assistance with. So we're going to develop a proposal, but we're just not staffed to do that right now. I'm looking at it more as a contingency at this point. I think for some people it would be more convenient, I'm sure. So it's a big lift for us. I mean, that's the bottom line. That was my note here. It's a big lift, and it's a high visibility. We did brief the governor earlier this week on this. She and her chief of staff and senior policy people were very concerned about this, obviously, because it's coming up next summer. And she had a couple of good suggestions that we'll follow up as well on that. So that's Real ID. That's our first tsunami that I'm anticipating. The second tsunami of customers coming to our offices is really House Bill 2015, passed last session. Takes effect January 1st of 2021, a little less than 6 months after we start offering the Real ID credentials. It changes the eligibility for a standard Oregon driver license or ID card, removes the legal presence requirement. So you still have to prove who you are, your identity, your date of birth, but you don't have to prove that you're in the country legally. So that goes away. The best estimates we have right now is about 100,000 driving age individuals who would be eligible January of 2021. It's a big deal for us because it's been many years since we have accepted foreign issued documents, birth certificates from Mexico and South America, other places. There's a training aspect to this for our employees as well, looking for if there are any security features on documents, because before we had legal presence here, we actually had a lot of counterfeits, a lot of fraudulent applications, and you can train your employees as much as you can, but there's a lot of different issuance standards around the world. In some places, whiteout is acceptable. A selective typewriter right over the top of it, that's actually been issued by a legitimate, identity credential issuing entity. Knowing that is helpful, but it's going to be a huge training effort for our employees and a very big change. Like I said, we estimate there could be 100,000 more people. It's good to note that a prospective petition to repeal this bill has been filed with the Secretary of State's office. The Elections Division has, I believe, a week or two. Oh no, they've actually confirmed that enough signatures were submitted to start the drafting of the ballot measure. And so over the next year, they will have an opportunity to submit 112,020 valid signatures by July 2nd of next year. And if the Elections Division confirms that there are at least that amount of signatures referring the new law, it would be on the ballot in November. Not much time before the law takes effect. January 1st of 2021. So November of 2020 is the general election. So it had an emergency clause, so it is in effect. I mean, we are doing all the preparations. We'll be ramping up as best we can to be ready, all the time knowing that there potentially is this vote of the electorate that could potentially overturn it. So we'll do as best we can to be as prepared as we can with that. But just the timing of this is going to be very problematic for us. Another challenge for us. So.
You're working under the assumption it will not be repealed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It is the law of the land for us as far as that is concerned. We'll, of course, be keeping an eye out on news reports on signature gathering, I'm sure, but it is something we have to implement, and we are proceeding accordingly. We did get additional positions for that as well. There were 71 positions late in the biennium. We haven't started recruiting to fill any of those. They're late biennium fills. But again, hiring, training, onboarding all these new people and deploying them across the state. We have created a public-facing webpage for this. It's got frequently asked questions, and it will be updated as we go along, as we hear more and have more information for people. There will be rulemaking for this as well, because it's changing the documents that we will accept for issuing, again, it's a standard, our regular driver's license, where before there was a driver card that was approved, and that was overturned by the voters. It was a separate type of card. This is the standard Oregon driver's license will no longer require that you prove that you are legally present in the United States. So we'll have two cards, a standard card that these individuals could apply for, and a Real ID credential that they would not qualify for. So, okay, at that, I will just conclude that contact information, if you have any questions for us after the meeting, just let us know. Keep you informed that these are both very big things for us and for you to be aware of.
Well, thank you all for the presentation, very informative. Are there questions? Commissioner Smith?
Yes. In the new system, can you speak shortly about the cybersecurity elements that you've considered in the program?
Chair Van Brocklin, Commissioner Smith, we are using the state data center, enterprise technology services. All the hardware and software is behind firewalls, and that's where the new system is stored. We have strong security with the system, and this same system has to be approved by other entities like the Social Security Administration for that type of security. So we'll be going through that review coming up here soon. This system is used in about 12 other states, and they have not experienced any issues with security at this point.
It's part of the state umbrella computerized
Right.
system.
Yes.
I have one question.
Commissioner Callery?
You've talked about a lot of data accumulation and storage. Is there any statutorily mandated elimination of any of this data, or just to have to keep warehousing it?
Chair Van Brocklin, Commissioner Callery, all these documents have retention periods, so they can be, archived, or at least, eliminated at some point. Everything would have that. Yes.
Just curious. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments? Thank you again. Keep us informed.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
you,
Thanks
Tom.
very much. Yeah. Is there any other business to come before us today? If not, we are adjourned.